It's Rabbi Akiva Males in Memphis, Tennessee. And I hope you're feeling well and that your tanis, the fasting, is going as well as possible. This morning on Tisha B'Av, I was asked to share some thoughts about one of the Kinnahs, and it's going to be Kinnah Yud Aleph. If you're using your art scroll, it'll be on page 182. If you have the Koran, it'll be on page 288. I'd like to talk for a minute about this Kinnah. This Kinnah, as we said, it's Kinnah Yud Aleph 11. And our tradition has it that this is a very important Kinnah because this, in fact, was authored by Yirmiyahu Hanavi. It was offered by our prophet Yirmiyahu, and it was said as a lamentation. It was said almost as a eulogy of sorts over Yoshiyahu HaMelech, King Yoshiyahu. And what was the story? Why was Yirmiyahu so taken aback by the death of Yoshiyahu? In order to understand that, we have to look into some of the life of Yoshiyahu as it's mentioned in this Kinnah. Yoshiyahu came close. He was close to bringing Bnei Yisrael to the absolute level of tshuva, of repentance on a national level, something that the Torah would talk about. In the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu in the Torah tells us that eventually at some point we would have a national period of teshuva. Yoshiyahu was this close to making that happen. This was towards the end of Bayis Rishon, or the first Beis HaMikdash period. Just to put this in perspective, Yoshiyahu's grandfather was the evil king Menashe. Menashe worked long and hard to do his utmost to spread Avodah Zarah, idol worship, throughout the width and breadth of Eretz Yisrael, even introducing idol worship into the Kodesh HaKadoshim of the Beis HaMikdash. So hard to imagine, but that was the grandfather, Menashe. That was the grandfather of Yoshiyahu HaMelech. Although at the end of his life, Menashe repented, at that point it was too late to undo the terrible damage that he had done, all the idol worship that he had introduced into the land of Israel. Yoshiyahu, we're told, becomes king at a very young age. He was only 8 years old. It was after his evil father had been assassinated. And we're told that Yoshiyahu rules for 31 years. Yoshiyahu, we're told, never saw a Sefer Torah towards the beginning of his life until 18 years into his reign. That's how pervasive idol worship was, and that's the campaign that had gone on to erase all vestiges of Torah study and Torah observance. It's hard to imagine. This is during the time the first Beis HaMikdash still stood. Nonetheless, that was the milieu to which Yoshiyahu was born and to which he started his reign. And we're told that 18 years into his reign, the Kohen Gadol at the time, his name was Chilkiyahu. He was the father of Yirmiyahu Hanavi. And he was supervising some much-needed repair work that was taking place in the Beis HaMikdash. And in the course of this repair work, they came upon a secret chamber that had been hidden away there, and they found a Sefer Torah that had been squirreled away. And it seems as if some of the idol-worshipping groups in Bnei Yisrael at the time had made all efforts to destroy Sefer Torah. Someone must have hid one in a secret chamber in the Beis HaMikdash, and upon doing this repair work, they found the Sefer Torah, and they brought it to Yoshiyahu HaMelech. He opened it, and it was right ready at the Tochacha, specifically at the point where it's talking about that if Bnei Yisrael would not follow the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they were straying after idol worship, they would be led into Galus, into exile, and their king would be led out in front of them. And this made an incredible impression on Yoshiyahu, on a young Yoshiyahu, and we're told that he tore Kriya, he was shaken to the core, and he declared, Aleinu lahakim, it's our obligation to do everything we can to become more learned, to become more observant, and to do everything possible to uphold all that's written in the Sefer Torah. And we're told that Yoshiyahu goes on a campaign to educate himself, but also to educate all of Eretz Yisrael, all the Jews living in Israel, and to get everyone once again to hold firm, to commit themselves to the Torah and to the mitzvahs, and to eradicate Avodah Zarah. He goes on a campaign to purge all vestiges of Avodah Zarah from throughout the land of Israel. And he accomplished much. He really did. However, he was a bit too confident. And that's what we're going to read about in this Kinnah. He thought that he had done a far better job than he actually had. And he thought he had rooted out all forms of idolatry. This Kinnah will make reference to the forms that some people were very sneaky, that they understood that Yoshiyahu's police were going to be coming in making home inspections to make sure there were no idols. So what they did was they cut their idols in half and they attached each half to the insides of their doors. So as the police would come in and open the doors and they would look, they wouldn't find any idols. But when those doors would be shut, then an idol its image would be formed once again. That was just one of the tricks that some people had done in order to maintain idol worship in the land of Israel. But as we said, he became too confident. He really thought he had he had erased all vestiges of idol worship. And what we're told that this is in the end of Melachim Beis, in the end of the second book of Kings. It's in Perek Chav Gimel, it's 23, and we'll find out about this all the way at the end. It's in Pasuk Chav Tes 29. We say, the Pasuk tells us that at the end of, how did Yoshio's reign come to an end? The Pasuk says, B'yamav Ola Paro Necho, Melech Mitzrayim al Melech Ashur, that the king of Egypt, who was named Paro Necho or Paro Necho, he decides he's going to march through Eretz Yisrael, through the land of Israel. It looks like, from a plain reading of the text, that he wants to wage war al Melech Ashur, against the king of Assyria near the Euphrates, al Nahar Paras. And Yoshio HaMelech decides, no, he's not going to allow Paro Necho to march through Eretz Yisrael, even though Paro Necho had no interest in waging war with Yoshio. Nonetheless, Yoshio felt, he was so confident that the Torah and the Nevi'im had talked about, that if we really succeed as a people in following the Torah and the mitzvahs, and there's no avodah zarah in the land of Israel, no foreign army, no foreign forces will march through Eretz Yisrael, even if they're not going to wage war with the Jews, but even to march through Eretz Yisrael on the way to wage war against someone else, it wouldn't happen. And Yoshio was so confident that Bnei Yisrael was holding at that point. So he decided he's going to march with his army to put an end to Paro Necho's marching through Eretz Yisrael. And unfortunately, he was too confident. He didn't believe the words of Yirmiyahu telling him Bnei Yisrael was not as healthy, and they weren't as observant as Yoshio thought they were. And tragically, he was killed at Megiddo. The pasuk tells us, "Vayelech Melech Yoshio lekraso," that Melech Yoshio went out to march against Paro Necho, v'yimiseu b'Megiddo kirososo, and he was killed at Megiddo when they saw him. The Kinnah describes the fact how he was killed by archers, that they shot many arrows into him. And when he was lying, passing away, Yirmiyahu came to comfort him, and he declares, our Masorah is, our tradition is, he says, Hashem HaTzadik, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is righteous, and I was wrong for not having listened and to what the Navi had warned me, that Bnei Yisrael was not as righteous as I thought they were. That is the basic message of this Kinnah. And again, the reason why it's so important is because Yirmiyahu himself felt it was crucial to recite a Kinnah over the passing of Yoshio, because with Yoshio's passing, Yirmiyahu saw that was the last hope that Bnei Yisrael had for the first Beis Hamikdash to have been spared, because he came this close to leading Bnei Yisrael into a level of national tshuva on a grand scheme, bringing everyone closer to Hashem, to the Torah, to the mitzvahs, and eradicating avodah zarah from the midst. I want to share with you one more brief thought on this Kinnah. I saw this last summer, and I thought it was incredible. Again, the pasuk in Melachim, when it talks about this fight, it says that Paro Necho wanted to march through Eretz Yisrael because he wanted to wage war against Melech Ashur, the king of Assyria. And the way the pasuk says it is Al Melech Ashur. He wanted to wage war, to march al Melech Ashur, which a plain reading of the text means he wanted to fight the king of Ashur. And that's what Yoshio wanted to stop him from doing, marching through Israel to fight against the king of Ashur. I saw something phenomenal, a book I bought last summer. It's called Uncovering Sefer Yirmiyahu. It was written by a Rabbi Yehuda Landi in Israel. Fascinating Talmud Chacham and author. He's got a marvelous grasp on history as well. He had an earlier book, it was called Purim in the Persian Empire, Rabbi Yehuda Landi, where he went through Megillas Esther, showing based on his finds, everything he's been able to hunt down about the Persian Empire that once existed, how it fits like a glove with what we're told in the Megillah. It was absolutely fascinating. So when I saw he had something on Sefer Yirmiyahu, I said I had to buy it and I have to see what he's got to say. And I found something fascinating which relates to this Kinnah. The pasuk says that Paro Necho wanted to march al Melech Ashur, which a plain reading of the text makes it sound as if Paro Necho wanted to fight against the king of Ashur. But what Rabbi Landi uncovered is that through many of the Babylonian tablets of the time that historians have, that's not the way it seems. It seems Paro Necho was actually an ally of the Melech Ashur and wanted to march across Israel to bulk up the forces of Ashur, the Assyrians, in their struggle against the Babylonians. So if that's the case, and that's how the Babylonian texts have it, that Paro Necho wanted to join up with Melech Ashur in order to fight the Babylonians, if that's the case, Rabbi Landi wants to know, how do we reconcile what the Navi tells us, that, and what the Kinnah makes mention of here, that Paro Necho was marching across the land of Israel al Melech Ashur, because it sounds like he wanted to fight with the king of Ashur. So here's what Rabbi Landy does. Rabbi Landy says we have to read those words based on the sources, what the Babylonian tablets are telling us, and some other historical sources as well, is that we have to say that's lav davka. When the pasuk says that Paro Necho was marching to fight Al Melech Ashur, it doesn't mean against the king of Ashur, but rather it means as an ally of the Melech Ashur, as an ally of the Assyrians against the Babylonians. That's how Rabbi Landy reconciles this, and it makes a lot of sense. Now, based on this, Rabbi Landy has a problem, is that the same Babylonian texts that talk about this, they also mention that Paro Necho's father, the previous king of Egypt, 7 years earlier, marched through Eretz Yisrael to do the same thing. So the question is, why did Yoshio Melech only decide now is the time to stop foreign armies from marching through and wanted to stop Paro Necho, but he did not want to stop Paro Necho's father? So Rabbi Landy had two suggestions. One suggestion is that 7 years earlier, perhaps Yoshio Melech didn't feel strong enough. He didn't feel his army was strong enough to be able to put a stop to this foreign force that wanted to march through Israel. That's one idea. And the second idea is, it fits beautiful with this Kinnah, is that what gave Yoshio the confidence to march against Paro Necho, even though Yirmiyahu told him not to, was because he felt his tshuva campaign was so successful that Bnei Yisrael had eradicated any vestige of Avodah Zarah, of idol worship from the land of Israel. And that's why he felt, now Hashem will be with me, I'll march against Paro Necho. 7 years earlier, he hadn't been that successful yet. They hadn't been able to purge all vestiges of idolatry from the land of Israel. So that's why Yoshio Melech was lacking the confidence to march 7 years earlier against the father of Paro Necho, who wanted to bring Egyptian forces through Eretz Yisrael to join up with the Assyrians to wage war against the Babylonians. I thought it's a wonderful idea, because what ends up happening now is Rabbi Landy has a way to reconcile the historical record and what the Navi tells us in Sefer Melachim, together with what this Kinnah tells us, is that Yoshio's entire motivation for fighting against Paro Necho, even though there was no threat to Am Yisrael, was to stop him from marching a foreign army through Israel, because we had done such a great job of observing the Torah and keeping the Torah and the mitzvos and keeping Avodah Zarah away. So why didn't he want to do the same thing 7 years earlier? Because at that point, Bnei Yisrael hadn't yet, his tshuva campaign hadn't been so successful. Now that it was so successful, now's when he had the confidence to go to war against Paro Necho. Tragically, he was too confident, as we said. And despite Yirmiyahu warning him that Bnei Yisrael was not as kosher as he thought they were, he only saw the good, and he wanted to believe Bnei Yisrael had been so successful at eradicating Avodah Zarah, and that's what led him to fight against Paro Necho, and that was his downfall. I think as we sit this Tisha B'Av, and we reflect on this, we reflect upon the failings of Yoshio. Yes, we reflect on the fact that he died, and the reason why he died earlier and before he had a chance to accomplish his mission was because he ignored the words of Yirmiyahu, who told him Bnei Yisrael was not as kosher as he thought they were. But at the same token, what gave him that confidence to march off to war against Paro Necho was because he believed, he only saw the good. He saw that Bnei Yisrael had made such strides and such incredible accomplishments towards eradicating Avodah Zarah. He only saw the good in Bnei Yisrael. And now again, while that should have been tempered with a sense of reality, there's still something to be learned from there, that all of us should strive to see the good in our fellow Jews. And even if we have to be realists, nonetheless, let's have that eye of Yoshio that's just striving to see the good. Sadly, Yoshio should have listened to Yirmiyahu, who told him it wasn't as good as he thought it was. But nonetheless, Yoshio still had this taiva, he had this passion that he only wanted to see the good in Klal Yisrael. And God willing, each and every one of us should develop some of that. We should have an ayin tov. We should have a good eye to only see the good in Klal Yisrael. And hopefully that'll amend and that'll help us recover from some of the sinas chinam, that baseless hatred, which still plagues us and our people. I hope everyone has an easy fast and a meaningful day.